Look, unicorns do exist.
Psh, we all know unicorns are mythical creatures, whereas dinosaurs actually did graze the very land we're standing on.
Okay, well, before we go back and forth about our own existence, the real question of the decade is, do you know where your sensitive data exists? Or is it a myth that your PII and sensitive information going back and forth in your company will never be leaked?
It sounds like we can prove that that's actually a myth.
Indeed it is, but Google's Data Loss Prevention API can help classify and redact information at the source. Enough of us talking, let's jump into a demo. So this is a great opportunity for talking about the Data Loss Prevention API, and it's a need of the hour, right, in a way. Because if you think about it, it's reported that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are generated every day. That's a lot of information, a lot of sensitive information that is generated by users and millennials like you and I. In fact, it was told that 90% of the data that we're using today was generated just in the last few years. Now, where does DLP come into play? Whenever we're talking to our company in HR, or whenever we're talking to our credit card company or our credit score company, we tend to exchange some sensitive information, such as our phone numbers, our social security numbers, zip codes, date of birth, etc. DLP helps you classify and redact the information. How does it do that? DLP API will traverse through your raw data, classify it into a social security number, phone number, and there are about 40, 50 types of classifications like this that you can see on the website. It redacts that information and then lets you use it for further analysis, secure sharing within your company, and for app development. Let's look at an app development section. This is a situation that we've all seen before, right? Like there's a customer agent and there's Alice, who's a customer who's trying to get an annual application to work correctly. Niels asked her for the last 4 digits of a social security number and contact information. Alice has clearly overshared. She's not only given her entire social security number, she's given her email address and a photo of a social security card. Now, enterprises want to store this information for further data analysis and improvement. But if they store this, they're exposing Alice's private information to the entire organization, and they can potentially get sued. Alice can potentially lose her social security and her identity. How do we fix that? Soon as we click End Chat, a DLP API runs in the background, traverses through this chat, and redacts the information. You can see that the phone number has been masked, her social security has been masked, and only the last 4 digits have been maintained. Her email address is completely blocked out. And this is one of my favorite features. The social security number, despite it being a photo, the numbers have been masked, and it's classifying it as a social security number, as well as the likelihood that this is a very likely chance of being a social security number. Like that, you have others like US Census names. And all of this information can now be stored very easily into their database. Now let's look at what it looks like behind the scene. There's a Google Cloud Storage bucket. Yes, it's in the cloud, which has all your raw data, right? We're looking at an example right now, which has customer data, HR data, and a mix of data. This is what the data looks like in real life. There's a customer ID, their first name, last name, and some comments. These are just garbage comments, but you can see that there are some numbers over there that resemble like a social security number or somebody's phone number or credit card number. Let's see how DLP handles this information. Because when we're storing this information, we don't want to store their email address or their social security number. All of this information, after it is run through DLP, we store it into BigQuery. This is what the data looks like after DLP has redacted the information. You can see it gives you the table name, the row number. It tells you that it was in column comments, and this was the value, and it was an email address, and it was very likely that it was an email address. So now you know the row which has sensitive information and the value. So the next time you want to move this information from one place to another, you will be cognizant to remove the value or to be wary of sharing this information, or at least this row. This was another query that our team came up with just to show the number of occurrences of each attribute type and the percentage. This again is on BigQuery. You can see it's a 3-line query that's just coming up with a small metric that we have come up with ourselves.
Wow, I don't know what's more magical, you or the DLP API.
But don't be fooled, the DLP API is not a myth. It's an API, like the name suggests, that prevents unauthorized users from sending sensitive or unauthorized data.
Can't get more real than that. Thanks again, Prerna.
Sure, please comment, like, and subscribe below.
And if you'd like to get in contact with us, check out the link below.